Hey everyone, Luca here with MyMixLab. Today is a fantastic day. We're going to talk about the first official plugin from MyMixLab called Clip2Zero. Clip2Zero, this is like a pure, fantastic clipper. Very cool to see MyMixLab starting producing plugin from a clipper. The clipper is by far the most used plugin, regardless of the brand, that we use on any session. That might be mixing, might be mastering. And if I go back and I look pretty much every session, clipper or any form of clipping, it's happening all the time. And not only for modern music, I don't think it's based on the style. I think clipping, it's a way to have an artistic approach, so a sound related from clipping, based on soft clipping or clipping, or an utility plugin just to control level and gain staging purpose. So we're gonna go over a quick tutorial initially of the plugin, talk about the functionality, and go over from the beginning till end of what this plugin do. And then we're gonna put this to work to see in action working on a more utility-based approach versus a more creative approach. Okay, Clip2Zero, starting from the top left, on and off button, very straightforward. Coming down, we have a maximizer. Now, to avoid confusion, what the maximizer button is, it's a way to bring the level up to 0 and brick wall to 0. We see being detached the brick wall side to the drive side. So essentially is a threshold of level of clipping versus a ceiling to bring that level of clipping up to 0 and brick wall to 0. We're gonna see this in action, and it's gonna be more clear. So next to the drive, we have a fine tuning of the drive. You can use essentially with your mouse wheel, you can just use the mouse wheel for that, to be precise. You can also double click to snap to 0. And this is a way to create automation, but not only that, just like use the mouse to move the drive. Or if you are going from a physical approach, you can just move the drive. Now, little bonus, and we're gonna see this later, you can go negative on drive. You see the number, you go minus, you can go into expansion. But we're gonna look this a little later. Again, double click, go back to 0. Then we have oversampling 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, 16 times. Surprisingly, very efficient on the CPU, very friendly. We're gonna check that as well. This is not a compressor or a limiter. This is a clipper with different type of clippers. So go from purely clean hard to hard pro, to soft, soft pro, ultra soft pro. We're gonna go over the sounds of each clipper, but in general, I will say hard clipping is the most transparent and the most used for mastering. Hard pro, it's to me a great clipper for drum bussing process on stem mastering, for example. And when you start to go into different type of soft clipping, it's more related to reshape a snare, reshape toms, or do parallel clipping on drums. So different approach. All right, we have the big analyzer in the middle with a couple of cool features we're gonna see, which is speed and zoom. You can control from the keyboard. You can do shift and move, again, with your mouse. Very simple. And you can do zoom. We can go control, and again, your mouse. Or you just move with your hands. Also, you have a 3 different level, which is small, medium, and large. And we're gonna see this in action as well. I wanna highlight the plugin is resizable, so you can just drag and move. Very cool. You can go very small as well if you have a laptop computer. Then you have, again, your input gain, your output gain, and then you have your peak RMS and level of clipping, the peak RMS on the input side, and you have the peak RMS on the output side to see the actual peak RMS value post-clipping. You have a PCM and you have a true peak clipping, which surprisingly, I mean, so clean. Such a clean true peak. I'm very, very pleased with that. But also, as a bonus, you have a limiter post-clipping, which will turn essentially on a variable true peak limiter And we're gonna see this on the meter. Is pretty cool. The fact that this way you can probably create an output level good to go for DSP. So you can just like, let's say I want to export minus 0.45. You can be very precise on that. Minus 0.50, or I'm going to do EQ post clipping. I want to leave a little bit of headroom. You can do inside the plugin. Very, very cool. And then we have, of course, presets. We have the default factory presets, but also you can create your own. All right, let's put Clip2Zero to work and have fun. I want to start it from a session that I was playing earlier, where I do the first case of Clip2Zero everywhere across the buses and then on the stereo bus with a specific goal, which is no color, no sounds, just purely level. All right, let's play some music then. All right, first question, how heavy is? I know you guys probably have this question. So we know oversampling PCM mode is 1%. You can't get better than that. If you start to go oversampling, surprisingly, check it out, 3%. 16 times. Now, it's get heavier if you go through peak. Then you have a big jump. But then the through peak normally, it's the last stage before you export your master. So when through peak goes up to like 17%. But normally you have only one plugin on through peak on your master, and most of the time you turn through peak on before you export. All right, let's go back into the session. We have Clip2Zero on the master bus. For the purpose of today's session, we have no EQ, no distortion, nothing. Just purely a prep session just with clippers. We want to focus on the clipper only. So little interesting fact is latency. So I have a Clip2Zero on every buses on my session and the master, and this is the level of latency that we have. Check the keyboard. This is pretty stunning. So we know the frustration of have multiple clippers that put you on a state of latency across the buses. Then every time you do a loop, you can do this, but you always have this little delay on the action you're making. Anyway, so let's start it. What I did, I assigned a VCA bus to all my buses to be able to drive clipping, okay? And then I create a clipping stage per buses. So kick bus, low perk, high perk, the actual drum bus, the bass, the synth, and of course the master. So the first example is let's clip to zero. Clip to zero means clip to 0 dB. Let's put a brick wall on top. What I like to do in this case is starting from my individual tracks, and what I do, I use almost as a gain staging plugin, and I apply the same level of drive across my buses before I go in the stereo bus. What's gonna happen? We're gonna have a compound effect of a kick, then being clipped to 0, and then when the snare hits or any type of percussion, that will bring over 0. And then now we're gonna put a drum bus, another clipper, to bring back to 0. And then when we're gonna hit the stereo bus, we're gonna go over 0, we're gonna bring another clipper to bring back to 0. So this is the concept of clipping to 0 dB. Okay, so we talk about using the clipper as an utility. So I'm not looking to get any sounds from the clipper. I'm looking to cut the peaks and make it then sit to 0. Okay, that's my purpose. So essentially, song being gain stage to -12, but then I want to just bring everything to 0 from the beginning. And this clipper can be placed after EQ, compression, limiting, or any type of like distortion. This is like post everything on your chain. The goal is like proportional to bring every bus with the same level to 0. So I'm using the kick as a point of reference. I'm gonna use the first Clip2Zero on my kick, no oversampling. I do a little bit of drive, enough to shave the top of the peaks and bring to 0 dB. Now, when I'm comfortable with that, knowing the kick is gonna be the loudness point of my entire stems, I'm gonna copy the session and then I'm gonna apply to my low perk. So low perk, same settings as the kick. And because it's lower, you're not gonna see much action from that, but then as a gain structure will go up. So, and on purpose, I'm keeping the same type of clipper. You're gonna see spikes of snares. So now we do same concept, we copy and we place this on the eye perk. You're gonna barely see red, which is whatever is going over 0. Again, the point is bring the level up to 0, retain the gain structure as far as the gain from the mix. I just bring level up, 18 dB, it's a lot. Now I do that, now I'm gonna copy this on bass. And when we copy on bass, we change a little bit the type of clipper. We might wanna go soft. All right. Focus on my drum bass and the stereo bass. You're gonna see going over 0 a lot. And the question is, why is going over 0 if you are clipping each individual basses? Because the moment that each individual bass is being clipped, the amount of stems will amplify the level over 0. For this reason, now we're gonna clip the drums to 0 without any drive. Now we're gonna clip the drums to 0. Now if you look the level on my drum bass with or without, with, we want to go hard. It's going to be so transparent, guys. Check it out. So it's an invisible, completely invisible clipper. And if you look again, the meter on the drum bass, we are going to take the peaks down to 0 precisely without any side effects. Check it out. Now we clip to 0. Now what's gonna happen? Now we're gonna add the bass, the 808. Adding the 808, we clipping will bring the level higher on the stereo bus, and we're gonna exceed the 0. But then we're gonna have another clipper on the stereo bus. So that's the concept of Clip2Zero. Focus on the stereo bus level. Now we're gonna bring that back to 0. With no gain, just simply control. Now, what is the interesting fact now? Because we did multiple stages of clipping, the final clipper on the stereo bus is barely working, barely is touching the red. Okay, but now, what is the interesting facts? We want to take a look on our RMS level and LUFS. Let's close this. Let's check BX meter after this very simple process we did. Zero RMS. So obviously this is like a stress test. We are pushing so hard to see what point is breaking up. So we went to 0 RMS, which translate, if we are open now and a Pro L, just to look as a meter without make the Pro L work at all. Minus 0.1, so this means no intersample peaks, minus 3.35 LUFS, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, this is not a real case of making a record that sounds minus 3 LUFS. This is insane. But we want to just see how much we can push Clip2Zero to do something in a very simple way and gain to the level that it's impossible. I mean, it was impossible before. So what I do, I like to use a VCA channel. The VCA essentially is post-clipping on my buses before the stereo bus. And now we can just find the level that we like. So again, let's use the Pro L as an analyzer. And now we're gonna pull down minus 4 on my VCA bus. Now we're starting to get more on a commercial level of loudness. Minus 5.5 LUFS, which also means that we are minus 4 RMS. Sounds pretty good for me. So the last Clip2Zero on a stereo bus has no maximizer, is no needed. Again, its job is to retain level under a ceiling. Yes, we want to use through peak the moment they want to export the master without intersample peaks. And let's hear Clip2Zero with through peak maybe 16 times. How crazy is to see a clipper that is barely clipping on the stereo bus getting to a -2, -3 RMS. Pretty much we know clipping. So this is a good setup to have hard clip, again, no maximizer, no drive, just as a ceiling with through peak 16 times. To me, it's the perfect settings. Now we did like more a utility approach on clipping. Let's go more on a creative side of clipping, focusing kick and 808, which is kind of like a classic. So let's do just kick and 808. Now, two separate clippers. So we have the 808 clipper and the kick. So you're gonna see the kick line, so the brown and the purple 808. So be able to work with detached maximizer. Again, maximizer bring everything to 0 versus the drive, which is a threshold of clipping level. Let's go more now on a production mindset using clipping, okay? First, I wanna clip my 808 versus the kick. Let's go for soft. We'll do ultra. Let's go versus the soft pro. There you go. All right, so we are using essentially clipping almost like, actually not almost, like a saturation box to be able to reshape our drums. Now, be able to listen the saturation from clipping without the change of level of loudness give us a lot of options. So one of those on kick drum is reshaping the envelope without changing the level. So let's do that for a second. Let's say that we are very happy with the 808 sound with clipping. And now we're gonna go into the kick and find kind of like a balance that we like. Let's bring some other element on the mix. So now it's more like sound design mindset, it's more like production mindset. So you got the two approach. So clipping as a gain stage, as a leveling, as a loudness tools versus clipping as a sound design tool. I wanna cover a few extra things about the clipper on the master, which is pretty important to me. One, I mentioned before, the possibility to do a fine tuning of your drive. Again, mouse and keyboard, you can just do that. manually, and you can, of course, automate that. And also the limiter post clipping. All right, so let's see the limiter post clipping, what it does. Mention about this can be almost like a variable true peak that we really like. So check the Pro L waveform. Again, we're not using the Pro L as a limiter. We're just looking the analyzer of that. So I'm able to clip to 0 and now lower the level almost as a variable true peak limiter and giving up to -1 dB post clipping. So the little 1 dB post clipping is very, very good in case you need to upload on Apple Music, for example. They want like -1 true peak, but also if you decide to put any other processing post clipping. So one can be 1 extra dB of headroom in case of dynamic EQ, if you're gonna do post clipping, or if you just simply decide to put another limiter just for a sound purpose. Now you have like 1 dB, very control of limiting post clipping. So the clipper sounds fantastic. The main things to me is be quick and minimize the use of tools to achieve the sound that you want with no mistakes. The maximizer on and off, it's one of those things that before on Pro L, you have to do gain, you need to go and just do the 101 function and then forget to turn it on and off, or do option mode with the gain, but then you need to go back. Remember to bring this back to 0. And I feel the fact that I can do simply this, I can knowing that I'm clipping to 0 with no mistakes. All right, guys, just put Clip2Zero to test, give me some feedback, have fun, use on everything. See you next time. Bye-bye.